back to the next episode of Teaching Tune Up. On this episode, we'll be discussing managing engagement in an educational setting. My name is Carick Veale. I am a second-year student in the music department at Arizona State University, studying vocal performance and music learning and teaching.
Awesome.
Morgan.
My name is Morgan Peoples. I'm a first year voice performance major at Arizona State University. Um, and I have a kind of a focus in conducting. That's where my interests lie. What
And
about you,
I'm
Arjun?
Arjun Paramore Jr., and I'm a second year musical theater major with a minor in business, while I'm also obtaining my vocal pedagogy certificate. And my goal is to open my own community theater, which is going to be sort of like a mecca for theater and music, to where lower income students could get affordable lessons.
That's awesome. Um,
Sounds cool to me.
yeah. Why don't we go ahead and get started with today's discussion? I think first up we have Carrick.
Alrighty, so today we will be starting by talking about interpersonal interactions with private students, and this can be students of any age. Um, I know that personally, when I started teaching private lessons, I was nervous, let's say, because it was a foreign idea. The idea that you had to interact with one person for whatever that hour, half hour time block is, without anyone else to bounce off of, even if it is other students. Um, so, what I will say to sort of kick this topic off, or actually, it's more of a question. Have either of you taught private students, or am I the only one in the meeting at the moment?
I have not taught private students in my experience.
Mm,
I recently just started teaching private lessons, but I only have two students so far.
okay, interesting. Um, so, Arjun, did you feel that you had those same nerves when you started teaching, or was it more just a natural flow for you?
I definitely had imposter syndrome because I was like, I don't know if I should be doing this because like sometimes I don't know what I'm doing. But I didn't let that get in the way of like what I know concrete about what I'm doing vocally. So I allowed my love for music to like kind of show through my teaching. Like I was like, well, let me just teach the things that I would want to know as a beginner. And it felt more of like a therapy session to where I was like trying to like nurture a baby, like, come on, you
Oh,
can do it. And it's so nice because once you see the students, they're like bashing on themselves. And then once they start singing just a tad bit better, they get that drive that you have. And they're like, oh, I want to learn more. And it's always so nice.
yeah, Arjun, that's great. I mean, that's kind of why we do music in the first place, is that love and that passion for it. And I guess the fact that you can share that individually with a student, and it seems to come naturally to you. So, I mean, would
And
you say that it's sort of like like you just sort of know, like, oh, this is like what I love, and like you feel like you can communicate that well?
yes, because there's definitely was a time in my career where I was tired of singing because I was like, I'm not loving the I guess because I was learning how to sing properly. I was like, I'm not loving this thing that I love so much, but I was like, I do love singing. So I was like, I should try teaching how to sing, see if I like it like that. And I do, I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Kurt, going back to you, how did you, I guess, overcome those nerves that you were talking about earlier?
Well, honestly, it was just exposure. I mean,
Mm,
much like anything else, you're going to feel the nerves, and that's natural. And in performance fields, we know that really it's just a matter of experiencing it enough times that you get used to the feeling, not so much that the feeling goes away. For me, it helped to remind myself that regardless of what I was feeling, this student was paying me for something that I already know. I already know how to do this. So I am the professional in this setting. The
yeah.
nerves that I'm feeling, they're probably feeling them tenfold. Um, and so that kind of helped me to get past that initial barrier, the idea that I have control of this room and the lesson that I'm teaching is something that they are paying me for
Hmm.
and that I need to deliver even if I am nervous. Um,
Yeah.
sort of that outer motivation, that extrinsic motivation really helped me to get past my nerves.
Yeah. For sure. Do you feel like, because this just kind of occurred to me, I feel like it would be a little scarier with, like, I guess the older students because, like, they're so close to maybe our age range. Like, have you experienced any of, like, those kinds of nerves regarding
Not,
different?
I would say yes, I have experienced the nerves because most of my first students were around our age, but it wasn't necessarily pertaining to their age. It was more just the general nerves because
Yeah.
regardless of the age of the student, and this is even true of students that are far older than you, I've had that experience as well. Um, they're all there for the same thing, and they're just at different stages along the development. Obviously, it would be irresponsible of me to take on a college student who had 4 years of voice experience already,
Mm-hmm.
because they are much further along the process to the point where the stage that I am is, while still ahead, just a few steps ahead, not
Yeah.
20 that would be conducive to me teaching them. Um, so I guess that's another, it's not directly to your question, but it's another important idea to address, that you need to make sure that the students that you're teaching are going to be learning from you, that they have something
Yeah.
to learn from you before you can responsibly say, yes, I'll take you on as a student.
I mean, has there ever been a moment where you've kind of had to level with a student and be like, listen, like you're at a point now where I can't help you much further? And if so, like, do you have any resources that you direct them to?
So, yes, I have gotten to that point with a student before, but the thing is, a lot of them come, at least because a lot of them are not majors in voice, they
Hmm.
come to me with a very specific stylistic experience and a very
Mm,
specific idea of what they want. So when they reach the end of what I feel like I can teach in that style, a lot of times, if they're not looking to find a new voice teacher at that moment, what I would say is, all right, well, we can start studying something else, help diversify the repertoire that you're comfortable singing. Like, let's suppose that they came to me with like a jazz background. I can teach that up to a certain point. I can't teach it indefinitely because I'm not a
mhm.
jazz singer. But then if I reach the end of my knowledge in jazz, except they still want to keep learning and they don't want to put in the work to find another voice teacher at this moment for whatever reason, I can say, all right, well, I have a lot more experience in classical music. We can start studying some classical work, start introducing a few pieces like that. And if you find that you take interest, we can head down that route for a little while.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Um, I guess tying back to our episode name, the engagement in an educational setting, how do you pace your classroom? Like, and how do you keep the students engaged in a one-on-one lesson? I feel like it would probably be a little bit easier because there's less bodies in the room and less distractions. But I also feel like there could be issues of like if you run through something too fast, if you have extra time, maybe.
Well, what I'll say is that the lesson planning process for a private lesson is so different from the lesson planning process for
Mhm.
a group classroom. I never find that I run out of material, so to speak, because there's always one deeper level that we can plunge with any of the repertoire.
Yeah.
Whereas for teaching a classroom, it's once you reach the end of your lesson plan, then it's a legitimate skill to continue working further because you've got to manage all of your students and the topic at the same time. And that's more to your question, the idea of how do you maintain engagement? It's understanding that while I may be the one with the experience, that does not mean that I'm the only one with experience, period, or with artistic
Yeah.
ideas. If ever they're feeling like it feels like the lesson's getting stagnant, that it's becoming a little bit more lecture based, I start with a question. I say, all right, so what do you think we should do in this section? And then generally that re-engages them because then they have to think about it and then form an answer that they feel is authentic to their artistic image.
I
Yeah,
like
for sure.
that. I'm definitely gonna have to use that because I find the way I pace my lessons, they tend to go a little slow at times, but that's because like, oh, I'm sorry. Where was I? Oh yeah. Okay, so I tend to take longer because like I know this is not ideal, but sometimes I take 30 minutes just to do warm-ups because sometimes I like to explain why they were doing the warm-ups because I'm a theater kid.
Hmm.
So they're a little silly and they're like, I don't know if I want to do that. And I'm like, well, let's try it first and then I'll explain why we're doing it. For example, I have one where you may pant like a dog, like a,
Yeah, yeah.
and they're like, why am I doing this? And I'm like, why do you think we're doing this? And then we start that conversation and I'd be like, okay, well, the reason why I'm doing this is because one, it helps you engage your core. Two, if you make your inhale as loud as your exhale, then point A, point B. And then they're like, oh, whoa, like I didn't think that something like this could do that. And like I know it takes a little while, like 30 minutes of me like doing different exercises and explain to them, but it kind of helps them get a better concept of like what the things they're doing and like how are they helping them and like even like it gives them time to actually not feel like they have to rush through all the exercises. And
Yeah.
but I'm gonna have to definitely use that, like asking questions better.
Hmm. Yeah,
All
Arjun, it
right.
sounds like your
Just a
lesson
sec.
model.
I'm
Oh,
sorry, I
go
need to
ahead.
cut in because we've reached the end of our 10 minutes. So
Oh,
I want to make sure that we can talk about everybody's topics. Thank you all for engaging so passionately with mine.
yeah.
But I believe Arjun is up next.
Should be me.
Oh, it is Morgan. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then Morgan, whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Kind of an easy segue, given our previous discussion, because now we're moving into, as opposed to private lessons, large classroom settings, particularly with elementary age students. That's where most of my expertise lies because I'm currently a swim teacher, and my typical age group ranges anywhere between 3 years old and maybe 10. So, definitely like a wide range of elementary age students. So today we're discussing pacing with them particularly, and this is something that I have like early on in my teaching, I ran into this issue a lot where I had the topics I really liked, and with my like adult brain, I would be like, okay, check mark, check mark. We have all these things done, and then I would have 10 minutes left in my lesson time. And it's kind of difficult because if you do fill the time, the kids get bored because like they're not thinking with the checking of the boxes. They're just thinking, oh, my teacher's singing a funny song, and then when I sing that song one too many times, they go run to a different side of the pool.
Mm,
So um similar to what you were talking about, Carrick, with keeping them engaged in that pacing, I definitely feel like with the younger students, they need something fast paced, but not necessarily um like I feel like it's completely appropriate to return to earlier parts of the lesson a few times over. And I feel like that also helps with really getting the ideas in their heads. So for example, we do have songs that we use for the kids to sort of solidify core concepts. Like we have one called Tiny Turtle. It's like this. Your hands go on
mm.
top of each other, and this is actually streamlined position. So there will be times when I have to sing that song like 10 times because we'll be like, hey kids, like let's practice our streamline position, and they're like, we're bored. So I'm like, okay, cool, do we want to sing a song and then go back to it? And that tends to work because I feel like I use a reward system. Like the songs are rewards, like the kids will be like, oh, like you can go fetch a ring if we practice the streamline position. So yeah, I mean,
So I have a question if you don't mind.
yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that one of the things that you struggled with when you first started teaching was the pacing. The
Yeah.
idea that if you have 10 minutes left and you're still singing the same song, they get bored. Um, so then how do you balance that idea with the one that, let's swing back around to this topic that we've already addressed earlier in the lesson? Because if you're gonna do that, wouldn't you also use some of the same techniques to help refine that structure? In your case with swim students, that stroke or whatever.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you use the same aids for that? So how do you make sure that you're not burning them out of that method?
Yeah, for sure. This was definitely something that it honestly it's gotten a lot better as the time has gone on. But honestly, I feel like in the classroom, creativity and adaptability are the biggest things because yeah, the kids do get burnt out quite easily when they're constantly revisiting the same topic over and over again, and they get frustrated because if they didn't get something that day, maybe they need like time to sleep on it and come back the next day. Like that has happened many times where we are like working on a skill and they're just not really getting it, and then they come back the next day and they're like, teacher, guess what happened, and it's like perfect. So like we do have to be careful. Like we implement plenty of like break times, plenty of games, things to sort of keep their like minds active, but then making sure like, oh, like now let's think about this thing we talked about earlier. um how do we feel about that, like as our swimmers, like how do you guys feel about what just happened, and then we sort of gauge where they're at with that. Um but yeah, I there have been many times where I have to come up with a brand new game on the spot and make it interesting enough that they want to play it, but also somehow involve the topic at hand. So yeah, like we do revisit older skills and older topics, but we try to do it in a way that doesn't burn them out, by like introducing it as something new and exciting rather than being like, oh, we have to go back to this like boring thing that we just did, you know?
Hmm. No, that's definitely an inventive way of doing it. I mean,
Yeah.
um, I know that in my classroom experience, it's mainly pertaining to summer camps, and then as of recently, I am doing internships as well in an educational setting. And one of the things that we specifically train on is what do you do when you don't have anything else planned?
Yeah.
And frequently, the only solution is not a comforting one, and it's you need to do it so many different times to get the skill. Um, Now, I'm assuming it's very similar regardless of the content knowledge.
Oh yeah.
So whether it's, playing dodgeball, learning a stroke, or learning to play the recorder, fundamentally, these younger children only have so much of an attention span before they start
Yes.
veering. And then that's one of the first things that I know I had to learn to manage was that attention span. Can you talk
Hmm.
to managing that attention span? Like, how did you get to that point?
Yeah, so it honestly varies. The younger they are, the shorter the attention span is going to be. We definitely run into this a lot less with our kids that are around like age 10, fourth grade level. Um, and since I do teach such an active uh, subject, I suppose, we can burn their energy. Like, there are opportunities for us to, like, we do have the, I guess, privilege of having games that we can play, but I feel um like games and having something be fun is something that can be applied almost anywhere. You can make almost anything fun, and the kids are definitely more likely to engage when they find something enjoyable and fun. So um and you were talking about how we manage like the attention spans, correct?
Hmm.
Yeah. So this is something that I'm still working on because I'm very early in my teaching journey. but my go-to right now is oftentimes we have co-teachers. So there will be two adults per every maybe 6 to 8 kids. And we make it so there's always something happening for the kids. So if we do have to take an individual student off to the side to work on something that like an actual specified skill, we will have another teacher stay with the students and play a game or like talk to them, sing a song with them. Because if like the second you stop moving with them, they run back to their parents and are like, "We're done." Like they take that as a sign that they're just allowed to leave. So, and I imagine it's similar for like even into maybe middle school where like if you leave kids alone for any period of time, they will go off and do their own thing with it. So I think like the key to my experience so far has been not letting them slip through the cracks and like keeping them present in the moment.
So then that leads to just one final question that I have for
Yeah.
you. You mentioned that you co-teach quite frequently.
Hmm.
So in the co-teaching model, it relies on there being two responsible parties in the room.
Yes.
Now, that works excellently, but my question is, because elementary schoolers and kids of that age, particularly on the younger side, already will have some issues with divided attention.
Mm.
Um, and the idea that, oh, there are two people in charge, so who do I turn to? How do you manage that idea when there
Yeah,
are
for
two
sure.
teachers in the room at the same time?
Oh yeah. That is actually a very fair point because um the kids the model that we follow is we have two separate classes and the kids are assigned to their like respective teachers and then we come together for a lesson. Um and the kids do tend to want to stick to their teacher, or if those students have worked with the co-teacher in the past, they'll stick to them. um it honestly is like a comfort thing. They go to who they're most comfortable with or who they maybe know the most. But as for the divided attention, this is where like communication between the teachers really comes into play. Because if we don't have a clear idea of what we're both going to be doing and we try to do something different, or we just sort of like have a moment of silence where we're like staring at each other awkwardly, like, do you want to do the starfish game? Do you think we should work on like freestyle? And like the students can see that we're sort of just awkwardly trying to figure out what to do. So that communication is really like a strong basis for how smoothly the lesson is going to go. So we make sure that like when the students are supposed to be focusing on one person, we sort of stand in the back with them and act as one of the students, and then we're like, let's watch like Mr. Ethan, like make sure that like we're all sitting like let's sit like teacher Morgan and watch Ethan. Like so it definitely helps to have an example as well in the co-teaching model because it sort of like has it's almost like an extra body sometimes, but it also does ensure that we have extra eyes as well. So
Of course.
um yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm gonna need to cut us on this topic and move on to the last
Yeah.
one. Thank you, Morgan. That was very well thought out.
Yeah. And thank you
Uh,
guys for engaging. That was great.
of
Of
course.
course.
Arjun, are you ready?
I am. So mine was what I decided to focus on was the lack of care in neurodivergent students because me, I'm someone who has ADHD to where things are hard for me to learn, especially like music, because either they're taught in a very stagnant way to where my brain automatically dismiss things. So did some research and I found an article on NAfME website,
Mm.
and it was called Tools for Enhancing Accessibility and Engagement in Music Education for Neurodivergent Students by Evelyn Snyder and
Mm.
Brandon Ro- Roeder. Yeah. And the article basically was like offering different tools and strategies to make music education inclusive for neurodivergent students. and I thought I'd share some of the tools that I learned. So there's three categories. There's tools for creating and presenting music, tools for responding to music, and then tools for connecting with music. So, the first one that they offered was making a music notation system for students who are neurodivergent with like color in a way. So they were saying like you
Mm.
can change colors to different notes. So like when they're on the staff, they don't look as plain and boring, like just black dots on the line. And I thought that was very nice because even as someone who knows how to read music a tad bit, I can find that it's still hard to like know what note is which just by
Yeah.
like seeing a bunch of dots on the black line. Um, Another one was um selecting instruments that are easy to reach and hold, promoting active participation and engagement, meaning like say if you're on a saxophone, having someone who's gonna accompany them with piano so they can have that extra feel, or even allowing students to use like wait, what are those called? Like shakers?
Like a shaker egg?
Yeah, like a shaker egg
Yeah.
to like even to like use like as a metronome. I thought that was very interesting as well. Um, the third one was modifying accessories, meaning to like enhance accessibility for students with limited mobility, supporting
Mhm.
in different music making. And then for tools for responding to music, they said adapting accompaniment by adjusting accompaniment to accommodate diverse learning paces and reducing anxiety
Ooh.
about keeping up. I thought that was big because, well, I'm really good at keeping tempo, but I found a lot of friends who like sometimes they struggle with keeping tempos, especially if it's a
Mhm.
piece that like changes variously. So I thought that was
Yeah.
very like nice to be seen in a way because it's easy to get off tempo, and once you get off tempo, you can get frustrated. So,
Yeah, Arjun,
mhm.
kind of expanding on that one, that one caught my attention just then. Adapted accompaniments, does the article have any further information on the specifics of how that would work or any suggestions on how to create and
Yes.
like, yeah,
Let me actually pull up the article so I can speak from verbatim. How do you say
perfect.
that? Verbatim?
Verbatim, yeah. I mean, I would be interested to like hear about adapted accompaniments. Is it pertaining to a student like you mentioned earlier, like if a saxophone student needs like somebody accompanying them on piano,
Mhm.
how might they modify that accompaniment to make it so the students feel like they're safer? Like you right here, you wrote reduce anxiety about keeping up.
Yes. So basically, they said that a lot of neurodivergent students sometimes get anxiety by trying to keep up with the fast pace. And
Mm,
you would think that you have to do something so special, but really, what they suggested was just slowing down the accompaniment, allowing them to actually just be able to groove, learn, make mistakes, and then
mm-hmm.
starting to speed up the pace. They said
Yeah.
by slowing the tempo by 10%, it provides it provides more time for the student to actually be able to catch up with the pace that is needed. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I
so
really like that idea. The idea that the end product is still the same. It's just the
Yeah.
process to get there that's modified. Because I know that in my experience, it obviously depends on the level of disability and where it lies. But I
mhm.
know that sometimes what the students that I've worked with really wanted was to feel like they were just a part of the class and
Mhm.
changing modifying the assignment so that the end product is different. While I've tried doing it before, it really just it made them feel like they weren't quite as much a part of the rest of the
Yeah.
classroom. So where I might not have had the tools to specifically do that and to understand that slowing down the accompaniment and then working back up to it was the solution to what they needed, or one solution to what they needed. I'm a huge fan of that idea that what they're presenting at the end of this learning process is the same thing that every other kid in the class is presenting.
Yeah.
I guess that
That's
goes back.
a
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that's really important that like you make sure that you're being as equitable as possible when it comes to the learning experience because um the kids like your students are going to want the same end goal, but there are several different ways of reaching the same goal, and it's important that we recognize that as teachers and realize that maybe at some point we're going to have to modify a lesson or slow something down, you know?
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I think that goes back to pacing to where you have to, yes, you want to put all this information in this amount of time, but I feel like you still need to at least have some extra time because there's students who may move faster than others, and you still need to have that time to where you can actually slow it down for anyone just so they can even get a better understanding of what you may be
Yeah.
trying to convey.
Yeah,
Um,
that helps with engagement too, I feel, because I guess tying back to our title, like students are going to be engaged when they know where they're going, as
mhm.
opposed to just meaningless information being thrown at them, you know? So
Yeah.
it's nice that like there's a similar end goal for all students, but different ways to get there. That's really good, Arjun. Yeah.
Another one for tools for responding to music that I thought was nice was adapted books. This one could be, well, I say it's for children, but low-key it can be for anybody. They said that by providing a visual aid to help students remember lyrics help them stay engaged in music activities, which is something that I think would help for me because I'm more of an imagery type person. And I find that learning lyrics are so hard to where I do
Hmm.
have to find things to like make sure they resemble or like make sure I'm telling the story and knowing what part of the story I am to make sure I know
Yeah.
what I'm doing.
Are
Um,
there any examples of like adapted books?
they said by like using icons or just like pictures. So say if you're singing like Mary Had a Little Lamb, maybe you would have like a picture of
Oh,
Mary and then you would say lamb or have like a lamb and then it's like, okay, Mary had a little lamb. So every time you see this picture with Mary and a lamb, you know it's Mary had a little lamb.
that's actually great. Have you guys heard of zoophonics?
No, what's that?
No, Carick has.
Yeah.
It's giving zoophonics. Yeah, sort of the association of lyrics with visuals is really helps solidify that kind of thing. It's a good memorization tactic, and yeah.
I think it's nice also because like say if you're teaching kids, you can always do like, motions with your hands or something and it helps the
Hmm.
kids one stay involved, two have fun with what they're doing, and three, it makes the kids all feel as one group.
Yeah.
Um,
Going back to your topic.
mhm.
Yeah.
Um, I have three more left and
Yeah, let's go.
I'm almost done. There's communication boards and switches, empowering nonverbal students to participate in music taking and express themselves. I thought that was a big one because I definitely was a peer who saw a lot of people who were not verbal, and I can see that they wanted to do things, but they were like they felt left out. I think that goes right back to the first previous two ones of like making sure you have visual things and things that they could do where they can express themselves through the music as well. Um, and then the last two are tools for connecting with music. It's contextual relevancy, by incorporating multimedia resources that reflect students' identities and interests, fostering a sense of connection and relevance, and then inclusive participation, actively including neurodivergent students in music activities, promoting a sense of belonging and acceptance in music community. This one is big as well for me because I find when I do songs that are related to my background experience, like my identity as a black man, I tend to like want to learn more about the song and like want to dive deeper into like even the pedagogy or just the reason of why the song was created. And I feel like having that extra connection to a piece just automatically makes a student want to be more engaged in what they're doing.
Yeah, that's super important. Um, I guess I have a question actually.
Hmm.
Sort of tying back to that inclusive participation. have you had any like experiences that you can share with us where maybe you as the student had that inclusive participation and how that affected your learning experience?
When you say inclusive, do you mean like when I said that sorry, my brain just farted.
Mm.
Um sorry. When you said inclusive, did you mean like when I said that like I can relate to certain pieces, or when what did I say? I forgot what I said. Moving too
Yeah, you
fast.
were talking about how you like it when there's pieces that sort of play to your experiences or things that you know.
Oh,
Like that's so important. Like that we recognize that students that come from different places and might have different interests.
yeah, I find when we do when I'm in a group setting, we do pieces that are like similar to my background experience. It makes me one feel represented, two, it makes me feel seen in a way to where I'm like I've lived through experience similar experiences as this piece, and it just makes me want to learn about like who wrote this and like what did they go through to write this, and like
Mhm.
it just makes me feel good about myself, my identity sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's excellent, everybody. Unfortunately, it looks like we have to cut our time right there. It's been amazing talking to you both. Thank you for sharing your teaching experience with me,
Yeah.
um, and each other. And thank you all for tuning in to Teaching Tune Up. And please join us for our next episode.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.